We ready to go? Oh, there we are. Thank you. Okay. Hello, world. Okay, first of all, before we even start with the call to order, I do want to explain that I had had surgery, I don't know, about 2 months ago. I'm still recovering from that. My mouth sometimes does not always talk to my brain. I had brain surgery. So we'll get through this mini as best we can, and I will do my best talking so that y'all can understand me. But if you don't, please let me know. Okay, great. All right, we'll do our call to order, a welcome and roll call, and then we have some new members that we need to make opening remarks.
Pat Northey,
Here.
Jay Pendergast,
Here.
Jeffrey Alt,
Here.
Patricia Drago, John Macaluso, Stephanie Mason Teague, here, Pat Patterson,
Here.
Reggie Santilli,
Here.
Dwight Selby.
Present.
Okay.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We're complete this morning. Good morning, everybody. We're happy to have you all here. We have two new members that were added since our last meeting, and that is, we actually have now 3 Pats on this council, on this ECHO board or committee. So Pat Drago would like to welcome you. Is there anything you'd like to say?
I just want to say that I'm looking forward to serving with the group. I think the purpose I've supported since its inception of an idea.
I think you've been.
And as I think Pats are well represented and are reliable. So thank you very much.
Well, we're happy you're here. And then Stephanie.
Yes, thank you. I'm very much looking forward to serving and getting to know each of you, as well as all of the projects that we've currently funded, and looking forward to new applications. I think the ECHO program has been such a gift to Volusia County, and I look forward to participating.
Great, we're glad that you're here as well. And I don't know that I gave our 2 new members that were here from January an opportunity to formally bring any remarks that they wanted to say, and I'll ask you, John, would you also, Giovanni? John, if you'd like to say anything.
Yes, good morning. John Macaluso from Port Orange. I did have an opportunity last time to speak and introduce myself, but I appreciate it again, Chair. And I'm looking forward to a great opportunity here to work with the county and look at the opportunities for the local and city areas. So thanks again for having me.
Okay, and then Dwight, is there anything that you'd like to add?
Thank you, Chairman. Dwight Selby. I live in Ormond Beach. Served on the Ormond Beach City Commission for 6 years up through last November. I'm happy to be here. This is a very popular program, overwhelmingly supported by the residents and voters in Volusia County, and it's produced some amazing results with the cooperative monies provided by the local jurisdictions and or nonprofits. So happy to be here and looking forward to a successful term.
Great, we're happy to have you here. That you were one of my favorites, Volusionaries. We did the Volusionaries together. I also, for the new members, I'm going to call the names of our staff, and if you would just raise your hands so everybody knows who is representing the ECHO Advisory Committee. Brad Verbaugh, Kendra Hively, okay, Russ Brown, your attorney, Jill Markham, and Sarah Presley. And who's sitting next to you, Sarah? Sonia Baker. And what's Sonia's role? Okay, all right. Welcome. We're glad to see everybody here. Okay, we will move into public participation. Do we have any public participation today? No? Okay, then we'll do new business. And Kendra, if you want to. I'm sorry. Oh, you're right. I missed that. Approval of the minutes. April 13th, 2023, pages 3 through 15. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move the minutes of April 13th, 2023.
And I think probably my, what do you call it, Mr. Patterson, you would tell me that I don't need to do a motion, correct? I just need to see if there's any corrections. Okay. Is there any corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, we will file them as they are written. Thank you, Dwight, anyway, but I knew that Pat would get me if I did it wrong, so. Okay. Okay, new business. 2024 ECHO calendar is first up.
Yes, last meeting, we mentioned that we would provide the calendar for next year, 2024. You have that in your agenda packet to allow you to plan for next year. If there's any conflicts as they come up, you could let us know as the meetings come up. So that's there for you for future planning.
Great, thank you.
That's all I have on that, unless there's any questions from any of the members.
Any questions? Okay, we'll move on to project updates.
Okay. So for project updates in your packet, you can see there's a spreadsheet. The projects highlighted in yellow are the ones that are completed that will be coming off of the list. The orange highlighted item is the Deltona Blue Heron that was rescinded, approved by County Council. So that will be coming off the list. The other items I want to highlight are the projects that had no movement over the last 2 quarters. And just remember that this log is through the end of March. The quarterly reports are due Monday to us for this through the end of June. So on those, there's 5 of them that had no movement. We made phone calls to see where they were. The first one is 2013. That's the Southeast Historical Society. The windows and doors are installed, so they are done. They're just waiting to order to get the sign, and they've ordered it. So that's nearing completion. The next project to highlight is 21-05. That's Mary DeWeese. ECHO staff met with the city representatives. They have a new city representative there, so we talked with them to help them understand how they can best get the project completed. So they are in the design process of it now. So
And how long have they been a ECHO recipient? Are they getting close to having to come to ask for an extension?
so the project deadline is January 24th, 2024.
Oh,
So they do believe they'll get it done by that time. So they just had a slow start. So we will make sure we assist them and help them as Mary DeWeese. It's in Oak Hill. The next item, or the next project, is 22-01. That's the DeBerry's Bill Keller Park. The lights have been installed. They will start the dog park in the fall. So that's, I'd say, close to completion. The dog park, if you remember, I think they had to redesign. They brought that back to one of our meetings. So 22-02, that's the DeLand Alabama Greenway. The notice to proceed was issued on June 15th to the contractor. So they are moving along. Just remember that was an exceptional project, so they have 3 years to complete that project.
do you remember who their contractor is?
I don't remember that. No, sorry. And the other item that or project I'd like to highlight is 22-03. That's the DeLand Jackson Memorial Park. The playground equipment has been installed, and they are getting ready to install the sign. They have the location approved. They just need to order it. I do want to mention that this morning on social media, they did mention that that park was opening today. And they did mention ECHO, so that's wonderful. But they're opening it for the summer camp to use, so it's not officially open. They will do a ribbon cutting in the near future once they get the sign up and it's complete. But just wanted to make sure I mentioned that in case you saw that on Facebook. So if there's any other questions on any of the projects, I can definitely answer them.
Any questions on projects that, I think it is appropriate to note that the council has gotten pretty heavy-handed about them making their time. I hope we have expressed that concern to those applicants that the council is looking at timelines on these very closely.
We absolutely are. So like
Okay.
when I've made these phone calls, we make sure they know,
You don't
it's-
want to come before council,
Yes, yes.
because you
we-
will get it handed to you if you do.
We let them listen to previous council meetings
Yeah,
and
okay.
advisory committee meetings, so.
Good.
Well, yeah, we do share the information.
Okay,
Yes.
that's
yes.
good. Thank you. Okay, any questions on that? Otherwise, we'll move into Marine Discovery Center.
Okay.
Scope change.
Yes, scope change.
request.
Yes, yes. So just a brief introduction to this. We awarded them $273,102 for Phase 3. They are requesting this scope change because there was an increased cost in landscaping. They are going to request to remove some wayfinding signs, but they do anticipate putting them into the next phase. They also do plan on having this completed by the project deadline. Chad Truxell unfortunately was not able to be here today, but we have Cindy Flanagan here with Marine Discovery Center. So if you have any questions, she can answer whatever you may have.
Any questions? Okay. I don't see any questions on that one. And then we'll move to.
Pat, just one thing I wanted to share with the committee. So
Okay.
we had asked them, could you fundraise for the additional dollars to do this? And
For the
this is
signage
just
that they're requesting to
for the
remove?
signage
Yeah,
that
yeah.
they're requesting to remove. However, and this is kind of a theme, and you guys know this, and wanted to share with the new committee that the cost of material. So this project was originally estimated at $561,000. Now, to deliver this project without the signage is $842,000. So they have raised an additional $300,000 to get this project across the finish line.
That's wonderful news. They've been a good partner, in my opinion, with that. Are you speaking on the Marine Discovery Center? Okay, come on up. You have to come on to the.
My name is Ken Nussbaum. I am the chairman of the board of the Marine Discovery Center. My comment is of clarification. These signs are not being eliminated.
Correct.
They are being done later.
Right.
And the reason that they are not being done now is because we are looking at a restructuring of our logo. And so we're talking about fonts and colors.
Sure. Okay.
Thank you.
That helps clarify. Thank you so much. Okay. Do we have to take a motion on that, correct? Okay. Is there a motion to approve this?
I'll move to approve the scope change for Marine Science Center,
Motion.
or Marine Discovery Center.
Motion by member Alt. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second by member, let me be sure I pronounce this right, Malculuso? Malculuso, okay. Close enough. Okay, thank you. Any conversation and comments on that? Seeing none, we'll take a vote, and we'll do this as a voice vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay.
I need to recuse myself on this one
Oh, okay.
because I'm
You're working there? Okay.
one of my pro bono.
You're one of, oh, thank you. Okay, that will be a 8-0
Mhm.
and with a recusal. Okay, all right.
Okay, so the next item up is the Marine Science Center, the Raptor Education Exhibit. The county awarded them $208,298 in 2021. They are requesting a budget change to accommodate increased construction costs. So the components are going to stay the same. They're going to do some in-house, and they have some donations to complete the project. So there's no scope change. Everything will be, scope change, everything will be completed on time.
Okay. So, but we still have to take a
Yes.
okay,
Mhm.
okay. Any questions for staff on the Marine Science Center, which is the County of Volusia, where Marine Discovery Center was not-for-profit?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, seeing none?
Pat, what are we voting on?
So due to the ECHO guidelines mention, it's at the bottom of the letter. If the budget is 20% more, if they're asking for a change that's 20% more per subtotal line, we are required to bring it to the committee and to council to approve.
So even though it's no additional county money,
Correct,
okay,
correct.
all right.
Can I
Thank
get a
you.
motion on the Marine Science Center budget?
I'll move to approve the budget change for Marine Science Center.
Okay, move.
I'll second it if Pat Patterson says it's okay.
Okay. Any comment or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the Marine Science Center budget change request, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And I don't see any recusals on that. Okay. Moving on to City of New Smyrna Beach Women's Club Stabilization.
So last week, I got a phone call from the city of New Smyrna, the representatives for the project, and they are going to request to rescind this project. Once the contractor got into doing the work, they found additional wood rot, more termite damage, more mold than they anticipated at this phase of the project. The contractor didn't feel comfortable proceeding until these issues were handled or taken care of. So the city at this time does not have the funds to complete that and during phase one. So they are going to request to rescind this project. They don't have a letter yet because they just called me last week. They didn't get it completed. We will have one before it goes to council, and I'll make sure I share that with you.
Yeah, I think it was the week before that they were at council too.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
All right.
Mhm.
Okay, do we need to take a formal action on this one? Okay,
Yes.
despite the fact that we don't have the letter, we can go ahead and verbally, their
Mhm.
verbalization that they're going to rescind. Okay.
I have a question though for staff.
Mr. Alt?
Do we know, are they going to attempt to try and complete this project in the future? Or, I know at our last meeting, there was a lot of discussion is this building even
Yeah,
savable?
yeah.
Has there been any movement on
There
that?
wasn't mention of that in my conversation with him. He did mention phase two. He did mention trying to get funding for next year, but it wasn't a definite that they were going to move forward at this time.
And looking at the city council minutes when they were discussing it, they had actually only approved to move forward on a 3-2 vote. So there seems to be a lot of dissension over there as well. Am I correct?
That is correct. It was a 3-2 vote. And I think that's why we have the delay in the letter, because their commission sent that letter. So staff wants to bring it back to the commission to send another letter, then generate a staff letter.
Okay,
Thank you.
but they're not changing their mind, is not, but once,
That's not the impression I
okay, once
got.
this
No.
happens. Okay.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Okay, is there a motion to accept the letter, well, the verbal request to rescind that grant?
I'll make the motion,
You'll make
please.
the motion. Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
A second is motion made by Mr. Pendergrass, seconded by Mr. Alt. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, all right. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Now we go to ADA playground presentation.
Correct. So we have
Verbal.
Chris Lessig with us this morning, who is our operations manager and Parks, Recreation, and Culture. So we have talked, we do a lot of playgrounds in Echo.
We do.
And so we wanted to, at the request of the committee, provide a deeper understanding of what makes a playground ADA, because when we have projects that come forward, as our new members will see, we don't do straight up maintenance or replacement. We'll replace if it's going to expand the audiences that can use the equipment, which is many of the playgrounds that we have in our queue at this point in time. So we wanted Chris here today to kind of give you an overview what makes a playground ADA. So what we're doing in a lot of instances with our municipal partners are taking older playgrounds that may not have been accessible to a wide range. For example, they may have had mulch on the ground around them rather than a rubberized safety surface. So when we're replacing playgrounds, we're thinking about accessibility as top of mind. So, Chris, thank you for being here.
Welcome. We're happy to see you.
Good morning, thank you.
Good morning.
And that'll go to the next slide. Okay, thank you. So when I was asked to do the presentation, there were 4 different questions, but in the interest of time, we've narrowed it down to one, and that is what makes a playground ADA accessible? This is not a talk about playground safety or inclusion, but if you have those questions, I'd be glad to answer those for you. So how does an ADA playground become accessible? Well, the Department of Justice's American with Disabilities Act of 1990 is a federal law that prohibits discrimination based on disability, ensuring equal access and benefits to all the people. And under that ADA, the Architectural and Transportation Barriers Compliance Board, which is commonly known as the U.S. Access Board, have published guidelines for public playground areas. And there's a link there that you have. Did we pass out the handouts yet? And I'm going to be referring to those at some point here soon. So how does 88 Playgrounds
Well, can I stop you right there?
Yes.
Are you expecting us to get something from staff? A handout?
There is a handout I'll be referring to,
Is
yes.
that the PowerPoint? Because that's in our presentation here.
That's not in the PowerPoint. It's for
Oh.
you to have, so you can look, because
Okay,
there's
well,
more
let's-
information. This is just a
Okay, let's
pretty
take a
brief
moment and
overview
get
of
that
the
taken
major
care of
points.
So that, great. So that we all have
Sure, sure.
everything.
So I'll continue. The 8080 regulations, the Access Board, what you have are providing a minimum these are minimum requirements to be ADA accessible. It is not a golden standard, as I would refer to it as. Basically, it's the worst you can do and still be compliant. So we want to go beyond that. However, these are the minimums you have to comply with in a public playground. And while these documents refer to some specific play components, the primary focus of ADA is on access. So that's what we want to remember. For the purposes of the guidelines, transfer systems, ramps, stairs, decks, and roofs are not considered play components. So this is basically a picture of what you have in front of you. And on the very last page of that, just for a reference, I've also provided you some documents that we refer to and go by for safety standards. So if you had any questions, there's ASTM standards as well as Consumer Product Safety Commission guidelines as well. Those two documents aren't law, but they are a recognized standard of care that we try to follow. So these are the points we'll go through. Where do playground area guidelines apply? What is a playground component? How many components must be on an accessible route? What are the requirements for those accessible routes? And then there's some other requirements on some other areas like soft contained play structure. So the play area guidelines in this guide apply to all newly designed or constructed play areas for children age 2 and older. Typically that goes to 12. This includes play areas located in a variety of settings: parks, schools, childcare facilities, shopping centers, and public gathering areas. Owners and operators of newly constructed play areas are responsible to comply with these guidelines. These guidelines do not apply to family childcare centers where the proprietor resides. So if you take your child to somebody's home, they provide you childcare and they have a swing set, these guidelines don't apply to that. If you take them to a public daycare where they don't reside, they do apply. They also don't apply to amusement attractions or religious entities. So a play component is an element designed to generate specific opportunities for play, socialization, and learning. Play components may be manufactured or natural and may be standalone or a part of a composite play structure. So the question is, how many components must be on an accessible route? And there are two requirements addressing this: how many ground level play components must be on on an accessible route, and they are one of each type. And the second one is ground level requirements based on the number of elevated play components. Now, there's a table on page 15 of your handout, and that's table 240.2.1.2. You can look at that, and that'll give you an idea what those guidelines are. The picture in front of you is actually a playground we're about halfway through constructing up in Seville right now. So if you got an ECHO grant application, someone said, is this accessible? So you would have to count the components on the ground and also elevated. Looking at this, that might be a little difficult. I've done it enough years that there's other ways to do this. I would go to the manufacturer and ask them for a plan view. And this will tell you what all the components are in there. You'd have to count those up. But the manufacturers will help you out. And if you look at the top right corner of that, and I'll zoom in on that, they've already done this work for you. So when you get these applications, I would highly suggest looking for that sheet. They'll tell you how many are elevated, how many are accessible, how many ramp accessible ground, and how many different types. This is one where we just looked at. There's a second one. We're doing it Sylvester Bruton right now. It's not quite in this orientation, but it's the exact same playground. and they've provided that information, but at in the lower right-hand corner, it's formatted a little bit differently. I'll highlight that. And it's the accessibility guidelines, the ADAG conformance. They put it in a different format, but it's the same information. So sometimes you have to call the manufacturer to understand what it is and how they lay it out. Once you do that a few times, it's not really that hard. You just have to understand what you're looking at and making sure that complies.
Can I stop you right there? And I would like to ask staff a question on follow-up on that. Do we require whoever makes a request to do a handicap playground to provide this level of information so that we know that in fact that they're doing what they say they're doing?
Yes, so this is typically included as a conceptual and the
conceptual,
conceptuals.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So what are the requirements for the accessible routes? So there, in addition to the routes, there's ground surfaces, ramps, and transfer stations. The ADAG in Chapter 4 addresses accessible routes that connect the play areas to schools, parking lots, or facilities that it serves. Operators and owners of play areas are subject to all those other requirements of the ADA also, including the obligation to provide individuals with disabilities and equal opportunities to enjoy the play area that's provided by that facility. So these are some of the accessible route requirements. Don, I won't read through those, but on the ground level, the route can narrow down to 36 inches from a distance of 60 inches to work around a site design. For example, like a tree or equipment. The required 60 inches width enables two wheelchairs to pass each other or change direction. That's referenced on page 20 of your handout. The elevated accessible routes must connect to the entry and exit points of at least 50% of the elevated play components provided in the play area. The two most common methods are ramps and transfer stations. On the ground, there are accessible routes that should be clear floor, ground spaces, and maneuvering spaces must comply with the ASTM F1951-99, and that's a standard specification for determining the accessibility to surface systems under and around playground equipment. If it's located within a use zone, accessible ground surfaces must also be impact attenuating, and meaning F1292-04, which is a standard specification for impact attenuation of surface systems under and around playground equipment. What all that means is, Brad mentioned about mulch under playgrounds. You've all seen that. I don't like to use the word mulch because mulch is something you go down to your landscape supply and pick up. The problem with that is it is not tested, it is not certified as impact attenuating. That's not to say you can't use it, but if you're going to use it, I would ask them to provide that testing data to say it has been tested and it is impact attenuating for the critical fall height of your playground. Typically, mulch is not. You can get something that's called engineered wood fiber. It looks like mulch, but it is screened. It's uniform chips of hardwood that does that impact attenuation, and it also knits together, so it is also accessible. So those two things you need to, typically what we see is the poured in place, the rubberized surfaces, and those come with testing results as well to F1292. So the 80 ramps, these are just two examples of those. And the ramps are required on a composite structure with 20 or more elevated play components and must connect to at least 25% of the elevated play components. Ramps are required maximum of 1 to 12 slope. You see the rise and minimum clear width. Landings are also 60 inches in length and widths to accommodate the turns and passing of two wheelchairs. And also handrails are required on that. And those details are on page 27. The thing to remember here is if there's 20 or more playground components that are elevated, you have to provide the ramps. The next example is of transfer stations. You might have seen these and thought they were just kind of a quirky little step to get onto the playground, but these are actual transfer stations for disabled children. And they are used to provide access to elevated play components within composite systems by connecting different levels with the transfer platforms and steps. The transfer system provides access to elevated play components without the use of wheelchairs or mobility devices. At least 50% of the elevated play components can be connected by a transfer system in play areas with less than 20 elevated components. In play areas with more than 20 components, there needs to be a ramp, and it's connected up to 25% of those areas. So the next example is a crawl tube. You'll see this a lot, but the question becomes, what is this? So if you're challenged, you're looking at trying to figure out what is it, it's actually considered a play component, an elevated play component, but they're often used as an innovative way to create accessible route. So even though it's a play component, it's also considered an accessible route. And there are other accessible requirements for play components. You can see them listed here. The soft contained play structures, you typically won't see those. They're typically inside. If you go to a McDonald's and in the front they have this play area and there's netting and balls and crawl, that's a soft contained play component. It has its own requirements. You typically don't see those outside in a public playground. They're typically indoors. There may be a rare occasion where you get a request for an indoor playground. It might be something like that, but just understand there's different requirements for that. And also alterations. So that's my down and dirty overview. This is a playground we just finished up at Chuck Lennon. We themed that for the park because it's all baseball fields where it's around. It's a custom unit we did, and it's gotten traction from the manufacturer for park departments in California and UK already. So we are a little bit of a leader in doing playgrounds here. So with that, I'll give you any
Great.
questions you might have.
I'll start down with Mr. Alt for questions. Any questions?
So and the county uses all of this information. I'm just assuming when a municipality or another applicant comes forward, we're automatically checking this stuff as part of your staff review.
We will be using Chris now for that. We were just talking about that. If we get a playground, we'll ask Chris to review the plans.
Okay. Playgrounds have changed a lot since we were all kids. Where's the
Monkey bars.
Where's the rusty merry-go-round?
We had monkey bars. Okay, Ms. Drago?
You said that when you started that was the minimum, and I wanted to know from a philosophical standpoint, do we look to go above the minimum and to think and to watch how children actually use the spaces?
Absolutely. And I can tell you from my 30 years and being in the industry and being certified, that every time we do a new playground, even the one you see in front of you, I think I know how they're all going to use it, and the children find a new way to use it that I hadn't thought of. So absolutely, what you bring up is a great point to see how they use it. Now, do we try to go above and beyond? We do. Typically, it comes to a budgetary consideration, though, because the more we do to be more than the minimum, it costs us more. So
I find that oftentimes the code is set up as a minimum, and that is actually the maximum. So that's why I asked the question. Thank you.
yeah, this is not a maximum, it's a minimum.
Okay. Mr. Pendergast, any questions?
Yeah, no questions. Thank you.
John?
Chris, I do have a
Your last
question.
name is Macaluso.
For the L.
Okay, okay, Macaluso.
Just a question on when it's complete, or is there a formal inspection by anyone to certify that this does meet ADA requirements?
I will say for the county's projects, yes. One of the things we do before we even go through the purchase process is require them to meet all these specifications, including the safety specifications. After it's completed, we do a walkthrough and we do a complete audit on the playground to make sure it complies with all of those. Once that audit is complete, then we go into a routine inspection period. It's not quite as in-depth. The audit goes through every single part on the playground. The inspections, we do a high frequency and a low frequency inspection. The high frequency inspections are basically the wear areas, the swings, the chains, anything that has a moving part to it. The low frequency inspections go a little bit more in depth. We do the high frequencies, obviously, much more than we do the low frequency.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Ms. Mason Teague?
Thank you. Yes, I did have a question. How does these rules apply to existing playgrounds? Are there playgrounds that have already been built that don't meet these guidelines? And if they were to request funding for another ECHO project, would they have to bring their playground up to these guidelines first?
Well, the short answer is yes. Anytime you repair, replace, or modify playground, you're required to meet these standards. So the short answer would be yes, they would be required to do that to be compliant.
Mr. Patterson? Any questions? Ms. Santilli?
My only question is, what is that white object on this playground?
White object, if I had a better picture of it, it's actually a baseball. As you see the red lines, that's the laces. It's white to represent a baseball. There's some dots in it. They're actually climbing handholds, so you can climb it. It's a climber, is what it is. Yeah. And then the little one to the left of that is actually a spring toy, and the seats are baseball gloves, and the top piece where you hold your hands is actually a baseball as well.
So it's themed.
Correct.
Cool, very cool.
Thank you.
Okay. Mrs. Selby?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I guess Chairwoman. Isn't it?
I'll answer
Yeah,
anything.
my apologies. Chris, I have a question on page 33. It's the Seville Village Park slide.
Page 33.
No, it's red numbers are 33
Yeah.
in our
red
book.
number
I don't know,
33.
maybe
Diagram, yeah.
Okay.
the Seville Village Park. So you reference the table in the upper right corner, ADA accessibility guideline. So could you just explain what each of those things, obviously 14 elevated, that's 14 elevated play. What is 10/7?
Yeah, the seven out of those 10 are accessible.
Okay, interesting that they do
And that's the
10
same
out of
with-
7 instead
same
of
with the
7 out of
ground.
10, okay.
Yeah.
And obviously there's no accessible ramp. What is 18 so 5 out of the 18 are at ground, just explain it to me.
Well, we have less than 20 components,
Uh-huh,
so this playground does not require a ramp. That's why you see 0 for ramp accessibility.
okay.
Now, if we had 20 or more, then we would be required to have a ramp on this, the ADA.
And ground 18/5
Yes,
means,
means there's of a total of 18, there's 5 accessible.
5 are on the ground and 13
5
are
are-
elevated?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
And then types?
Types is it a climbing event? Is it a component you speak into, like a talk to? Is it a swinging or an overhead event? So it's a type of play component. And they group those. You can have several different components that are of the same type.
And then, so, not to beat the horse, but 4/3 on types means,
So there's 4 different types on this playground, and 3 of them are accessible.
oh, okay,
Yeah,
good.
so, and really, these all exceed what those requirements are for ADA.
Okay. And then the final thing was the note to the right for kids age 5 through 12. Right?
Oh, that's the playground, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This playground is designed for children 5 to 12.
Okay, so earlier I think you said generally these apply to kids 2 and up.
That's correct.
Okay, so when you design a playground, you can exclude certain ages, or, I mean, help me to understand that.
Yeah, there are certain components that for children under the age of 5 couldn't do or safely present themselves. For example, an overhead rung ladder. Children that age typically don't have the upper body strength to hold them. So if you had something like that on your playground, it wouldn't be for a 2 to 5-year-old. It would be for 5 to 12-year-old.
And how do the kids, or maybe more importantly, the parents know that? I mean, other than just common sense.
There needs to be a signage as you enter the
Okay.
playground, that this is for a 5 to 12,
Okay.
or 2 to 5,
Okay,
or in some cases, a 2 to 12.
right. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mr. Ego, you had a question?
Thank you, Dwight, for asking that. I wanted to ask, when you look at 14 elevated, and then you go accessible 10, 7, I couldn't get to 14. Sure what that is.
I had, yeah,
I
I had
was
to
reading.
actually call the manufacturer to get them to explain that as well. So that's why I was saying they have this done for you, but sometimes you have to contact the manufacturer to get them to explain how they do that. Yeah. I need to go back to them again because it was a little bit of a lengthy explanation, but I believe it's 7 are accessible out of the 10 that were elevated.
Well, but it says you have 14
14
elevated.
right. There was another explanation. I don't have that in front of me.
I was looking at that. Thank
Yeah.
you, Dwight.
I don't
Liars.
have that in front of me, but
Okay.
it did comply.
But that would be within the paperwork
That's correct.
correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Just as an
Trying to do the
interesting
math,
comment,
though.
Yeah.
when you present to council, you might have that paperwork. I've been watching them.
Yes.
They're pretty tough.
Yeah.
Okay. You gonna have anything else, Mr. Ego?
Yeah, I will say the one after that explains it a little easier. So it's just the way they present and format the information.
I know my head's spinning. I have a couple questions. First of all, what department do you work in?
Parks, Recreation, and
You
Culture.
work for Tim? Okay.
Yes.
So I'm gonna expand this a little further beyond playgrounds. I would assume that you do handicapped accessibility for other items besides playgrounds?
Yes, but there's a gentleman within the county who is in charge of ADA or has more knowledge of ADA outside of playgrounds than I do, and we refer to them.
Okay,
for
so
those
for
issues.
instance, how you make a trail ADA compliant would not be within your bailiwick? Is that-
Yeah, it would.
Okay,
Although typically our trails are designed and built through construction and engineering,
right.
and they have their folks that already are plugged into the ADA with that, yes.
Okay, well, we fund a lot of trails, and that was just something that, I guess, to staff, that we would, this is pretty interesting stuff, and I would now be asking those kinds of questions about trails. And also, I watched the council meeting from Tuesday. Councilmember Robbins brought up the beach access, handicap beach access, which we also build beach stuff. So
Right.
can you talk just a little bit about that? I mean, he talked about ramps. When you talk about ramps, he talked about a ramp. And
Right.
I know turtle nesting is an issue with the ramps and cars probably. So how do you make the beach handicap?
Well, I think they have a different set of ADA regulations as it
Okay.
relates to that facility. And for example, the playground we're doing now at Sylvester Bruton is at a different elevation where the parking area is.
Okay.
These guidelines don't fall into that other than the accessible route to get from that parking area. And we've had to go to construction engineering, find out exactly what the slope is, the cross slope, what the length needs to be to make sure we're doing that ADA accessible.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, I believe that handicap accessibility for playgrounds especially was a request of the chairman's, that he was big on that. And there's a group that builds, Treelor, is that her name, that builds? But you know what I'm talking about, okay, because she's close to the chairman, and they've been talking about handicap accessible playgrounds, and a call got referred to me about ADA requirements. So I'm happy to hear that we're paying attention to that, and to our staff. Specifically, we look at when a playground comes before us, staff does the intentional work of making sure it's handicapped accessible, correct? Just want everybody to hear that. Okay.
Madam Chair, Madam Chair, Russ Brown,
Oh, I'm sorry, Russ. Mr. Brown?
are you, your question to Chris, are you talking about how the construction is determined for, and specifically the beach? Or are you talking about how ADA access is determined, where it's located on the beach?
I
Which
know
one?
that we have at our drive-in points, there is handicap parking there. But on those areas that are not drive-in that you would park at, and I know that we have the handicap parking areas, but once you get down to the beach, how do you make the beach accessible? Is there a way that we do that? I don't know.
Okay.
Mr. Robbins had put something in front of the council the other day about ramps and walkways.
Yes, ma'am. His was, there's a handicap ADA accessible, I don't want to say carpet, but it's almost like a
carpet,
rollout
Yeah.
thing for
We don't
getting
use that.
across the beach. But we also, if you remember, have citizens can come with our beach services and get the
Bicycles. or
the beach
beach
approved
cruisers, yeah.
wheelchair
Yeah.
and
Okay.
some of that. So I just was more, my question was about if you were talking about how do we, like we treat the beach as an entire facility. Like Chris was talking about playgrounds, the beach itself is an entire facility, which determines kind of where we have ADA access.
I will tell you the last probably year and a half of my husband's life, he was handicapped. And so this is like real stuff to me.
Yes, ma'am.
And not just children's playgrounds, but how do we make our world handicapped accessible
Yes, ma'am.
as best we can, because there's places where we couldn't go because there was
Right.
no way to get there.
And that's always a consideration, especially for beach access and trying to make sure it's
Trails.
accessible. And
Yeah.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Yes,
Russ, I know in the business world, if you have an ADA violation, not only are you fined, but there's also punitive damages involved. Is the county or government, are they subject to punitive damages as well?
Well, we're subject to being sued if we're violating the ADA
Deltona's doing it.
accessibility. So generally, generally there is damages involved, but it's also about remedying the situation if we are in violation. I will say that not all lawsuits are valid. That doesn't mean you can't file one. So we defend them because we do think that we do a pretty good job with ADA accessibility and are not in violation. But occasionally there are situations and we have to remedy them, rectify them. As far as punitive damages, generally it's about not necessarily punitive, just more remedying the situation.
Okay,
And attorney's fees. And attorney's fees.
In the business world, there's many punitive damages being paid.
Yes, sir.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Reggie, Ms. Santilli?
Chris, we've had recent grant applications from organizations with playgrounds for covering the playgrounds to limit the sun exposure to children. Is the county thinking about that on future play projects?
We do. For every project we do, we take into consideration what the canopy is in proximity. We have to have a clear area over top for that as well. So if we get enough coverage from the canopy, we generally do not. Spring Hill is a good example. We have a lot of tree canopy under there. We just had 2 new playgrounds just finished. One just finished last week. The other one's being finished this week. It does not have a shade canopy over it, but it has plenty of tree canopy. We have others that do have shade canopy.
We have at the LEC, the amphitheater at the LEC in Deltona, which was an ECHO project, had ECHO money in it. They have a canopy exactly like you're talking about because they do not have shade there. And it really helps. So, yeah. Well, this was a terrific presentation. I thought it was going to be boring as heck, but it turned out to be pretty interesting. So thank you. I learned something. We don't need to take any action on that one. That was just okay. We will, we're just moving along really quickly. We'll move into, I'm going to reverse this a little bit and ask the staff to give an update on City of Lake Helen before we go to advisory comments.
Sure, yes. So the last council meeting on June 20th, the county council voted and made a motion to put the City of Lake Helen on a 1-year probation. They did not rescind their project, so they have a 1-year probation. The stipulations, the conditions are in the letter we provided. If there's any questions, we'll be happy to answer.
Okay. Are there any questions? I sent a letter to the commission as ECHO chair outlining our position as we had stated the or the meeting before, so they knew exactly where we were coming from. So, any questions on that?
Just, with the CAC supposed to be open Fridays and Saturdays, are there any plans to, how are we going to monitor that?
So for the next year, staff will do our monitoring visits like we normally do on other projects. This one will just be a little bit more often because they have a year that they have this probationary period. So we will do our visits like we normally do.
They don't live very far from me.
I know, I'm planning on going over there myself. But I know when we do monitoring visits, usually the organization, you tell the organization we're coming over here. Are we going to be doing that with Lake Helen, or are we just going to show up?
So it'll be both. And just so you know, we don't always announce when we visit other completed projects. We will just make visits if we're in the area. If it's in an area we're already doing monitoring visits in, we'll stop at some of the other projects. So we don't announce all of our visits to all of our projects. So yes, there'll be some announced and some unannounced.
I'll call you when I'm going to go. No, that would probably be a violation, wouldn't it? Can't do that, can I? Okay, all right, okay.
I just want one more comment. I listened to some of that presentation, and I just took offense with some of the comments coming from Lake Helen saying that this committee stepped over their bounds.
Oh, yeah.
And did things that they weren't supposed to do.
Yeah.
Lake Helen has been out of compliance for, I don't know how many years. Years and years and years.
It goes back to the original
Yeah.
grant request from the first round.
So, no, this committee, when we took that action last year, did not overstep our boundary.
I agree.
And I was totally offended by that.
Thank you. I was as well. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And they had a stenographer in the audience taking notes, which really offended me. Okay. Now that we've got our comments in there, we'll move. Is there anything else advisory that from you that you want to say before I go to
Yes, so I do have a few staff updates if you want me to do that now.
Yeah. Then
Okay, sure.
yeah.
So the strategic plan that we discussed our last meeting in April, it was approved by County Council on May 6th. The cap is $75,000. So staff is currently working on a scope for that at this time.
I understand they maybe added something to that scope yesterday with the.
That was a feasibility study for.
Oh, that's the feasibility. That's
Yes.
right. I'm sorry.
Yes. The other item is our next mandatory workshop is September 28th. The committee is not required to attend, but you're welcome. We have it virtually and in person, but that's for applicants, potential applicants that are going to apply for the next cycle.
That's when September.
September 28th.
28th, okay.
Yes, I'll send that out. I'll send all this information out to you guys. And our next advisory meeting is October 12th, so Thursday, 9 a.m. I'll make sure I send that out to you before, and plenty of time before. So with that, the items that you made motions on today will go to County Council. I will make sure you have that information, the date it's going, and the items I'll include in the emails also.
Thank you. I
You're welcome.
appreciate that. Okay.
One question, Kendra. When you said the mandatory workshop is in person and virtual, applicants have to be here in person, don't they?
No, they are, since COVID, we've allowed them to attend virtually. We just do that to try to get as many possible applicants as possible. So if they can't attend in person, we do allow them to attend virtually.
Okay, but if they're applying for a grant this cycle, I find it odd that they could be here virtually.
I would say, I would agree with you, Mr. Alt, considering that the federal government has pulled the plug on the pandemic and said it's over. So I don't know if you want to maybe rethink that or not, but.
We'll revisit, we'll talk with staff.
Okay. Other questions for the staff? If not, for staff, okay.
We were talking about site visits, and I just wanted to clarify if there are any guidelines or restrictions on committee members doing site visits on our own time. I know we all go together during grant phases, but for example, we're not to go together if we were to go to the park or something. I just want to clarify.
Right, so you can't go together, but you're welcome to visit any of the ECHO projects. And if there's anything you see or any concerns you find, share them with staff. Or we welcome any positive feedback too, so.
Okay, well, we'll go to advisory committee comments, and I'll start down.
Madam Chair, may I
Russ?
just make a comment? So I just, for the committee's awareness, and I want to congratulate Brad and let you know that Brad he's still the resource conservation, what's the title? Stewardship Director, sorry. But he's the interim community services director now for the county. So he's running a full department. So just want to congratulate Brad on that and bring that to the committee's awareness.
Great, we're proud of them. We're proud of them, and we're hoping that we get to see you a little more, but I expect with this change that we won't. Correct? That we'll be seeing a different face sitting down there? Have they made that decision yet?
I think that I'll still be involved with ECHO and Forever. They're two very high-profile programs supported by our voters at a very high level. So I will still be at these meetings and involved with the committee. So I look forward to working with you in a new role, but still being involved.
That was political. Okay. Okay. We'll start down with,
You would have thought he
White.
was elected,
I
with that
know.
answer,
That was
right?
real- that was
Yeah.
really
Come on,
good.
Brad, it was just a promotion and a job, Let's get real here. But I want you to know that your involvement would be greatly appreciated, and your participation. Beyond that, no additional comment.
okay, thank
Madam
you,
Chair.
Ms. Santilli. Anything to add?
Just congratulations, Brad.
Okay, Mr. Patterson. Okay. What? Move on. You're such a warm and wonderful, fuzzy person, Ms. Teague. Okay. Giovanni? No, I'm going to call you Giovanni because I can't pronounce. Let me try.
Comment about Giovanni is that first day at kindergarten, my name Giovanni on my name tag, and the teacher crossed it out and said, "You're John." It's simple as that.
So let me try.
So the story got
Macaluso.
out this morning.
Macaluso, right?
Macaluso, thank you.
Thank God.
I do have one comment. Congratulations, Brad, first of all. I did attend the Port Orange Rec Center opening back a
Thank you
couple
for
of months ago.
doing that.
And who else was there? Yep.
Thank you.
And as a resident of Port Orange, what an outstanding job they did there. Takes care of recreation for all ages, from young to old. So I'd like to congratulate the city and as a resident of Port Orange, thank the members who at the time got Port Orange involved in the ECHO program.
Okay, we appreciate all those that were able to go there. Senator Cass?
No comment.
Okay, Ms. Drago? Mr. Hall?
Yeah, no, I was at the rec center opening too. One of the things that I really liked was the big carving that they had outside the building that they carved out of I think it was the only tree they had to remove. It was a big live oak. And they made I forget what the carving was, but it was a nice addition to that project.
Go check that out because I
Yes.
just took down to that length, to that height, a big live oak that went bad and have thought the same thing. I need to, not me, but somebody needs to carve something there. I'll have to check theirs out. It was their arts group? Okay, great. Okay.
That's an excellent center. If you have the opportunity to go see it, it's a wonderful addition to that community.
Yeah, they did a good job on it.
And I want to welcome Stephanie to her first meeting. I've worked with Stephanie for years on other projects. She's a wonderful addition to this committee.
Great, good. Okay, nothing else to be said? I hear grumbling to my right, but we'll let that pass. If that's it, we are adjourned. I think this might be our earliest meeting we've ever done. So thank you, everybody, for coming.